Okay. Bless you.
Thank you.
So that first one is x is equal to 7 plus or minus the square root of 33 over 2. Any questions on that one? Bless you.
Thank you.
All right, the one in the middle. Anybody need me to go over number 2?
Yes, I need 2 and 3.
2 and 3? Okay, let's look through them. So number 2, I had x squared minus 9x minus 2 equals 0. So what's my first step?
Put the 2.
Isolate C, so I've got to move 2 over by adding it. So I have x squared minus 9x equals 2. Next step after that, b divided by 2 squared. What is my value of b? Negative 9. So I've got negative 9 over 2 squared. What is negative 9 squared?
81.
81. And what is 2 squared? 4. So I know I've got to add 81 over 4 to both sides. So I'm going to have x squared minus 9x plus 81 over 4 is equal to 2 plus 81 over 4. Okay. I need to add these two. Remember, 2 is the same as 2 over 1 plus 81 over 4. I need to make common denominators, so I know that's going to need to be a denominator of 4 to match with that one. To get from 1 to 4, I multiply by 4. That means I need to multiply this by 4, and 2 times 4 is 8. So now I see this is 89 over 4. So I have x squared minus 9x plus 81 over 4 is equal to 89 over 4. What do I do next? I set up my parentheses because I've got to factor my perfect square trinomial. So I set up 2 sets of parentheses, which is equal to 89 over 4. I know my first terms are going to be x and x. Signs are the same, and they're both negative. This is, what is 81 over 4? Square root of that?
9 over 2.
9 over 2. And remember, it was negative 9 over 2, and we've got that in our problem. Okay? So I can rewrite that as x minus 9 over 2, put that in parentheses and square it, is equal to 89 over 4. Place this right here. Going to work. So now, what do I need to do to this?
Square root.
Take the square root of both sides. Okay, so I set up the square root of both sides. So the square root of x minus 9 squared is just going to be x minus 9 over 2 squared. So x minus 9 over 2 is equal to the square root of 89 over the square root of 4, right? So remember, I can either write them separately like this, or in our last problem, I put them under the same thing, okay? I want you to see that they're interchangeable. If my square root symbol of my radical comes all the way to the bottom, that means it includes both the numerator and the denominator. Or if it makes you feel more comfortable to show them both underneath the radical, it's the same thing. So I'm going to have x minus 9 over 2 equals plus or minus, enough about that, the square root of 89 over, what's the square root of 4? 2. Now I need to solve for x. So that means my minus 9 halves needs to move by adding 9 halves to each side. So x is equal to 9 over 2 plus or minus the square root of 89 over 2. And again, I can write this as 9 plus or minus the square root of 89 all over 2. So I can either keep it separated or I can combine it. Do you see where you made your mistake? Do you see where you went wrong? Good.
I missed like 2 of these steps.
Okay, so if you're missing steps, if you're forgetting to do something, this is where kind of going through your notes, your steps in a process, when you're practicing, pull those out and make sure, because if you're practicing and you're missing steps, then more than likely when you go to use it again, you're going to miss those same steps. but if you're practicing following the exact steps in a process, then you're going to remember the steps better, okay? So we're going to have review sheets that we work on today. So as we're working through those, make sure to refer back to those steps so you don't forget them. All right, and then number 3, you said we needed that one too, right? All right, so number 3 was x squared plus 3x. Is it minus 8? Minus 8 equals 0. Let's go ahead and erase all this. Okay, so again, first step, we need to ID. So that means negative 8 needs to move to the other side by adding it. X squared plus 3x equals 8. Next step, b divided by 2 squared. B divided by 2 squared. B is what number?
3.
3. 3 over 2 squared. What is 3 squared?
9.
And 2 squared is?
4.
So I have 9 over 4. I need to add that to each side. Again, I'm adding a whole number and a fraction. So 8 over 1 plus 9 over 4 is, put that over 4 times 4 times 32 plus 9 over 4. 32 plus 9 is 41 over 4. So x squared plus 3x plus 9 over 4 is equal to 41 over 4. Next step, set up my parentheses to factor my perfect square trinomial side. My right-hand side, 41 over 4, just stays the same. First terms will be x, signs will be the same, and they are both positive. And the square root of 9 over 4 is 3 over 2. I can write that as x plus 3 over 2 squared is equal to 41 over 4. Now what's my next step?
Square root.
Take the square root of both sides. So I have x plus 3 over 2 is equal to the square root of 41 over the square root of 4. Don't forget my plus minus. So now square root of 4 we know is 2. So I've got x plus 3 over 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 41 over 2. I need to move my 3 halves. It is positive, so I move it by subtracting. Subtract 3 halves from each side. And x is equal to negative 3 halves plus or minus the square root of 41 over 2, which also equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 41 all over 2. Did you see that you were consistently skipping the same steps? Okay, so again, kind of working through those steps in the process, practice those. Okay. Any other questions? Anything that you missed and you still can't see why you missed it or what happened? All right, awesome. So real quick, let's think back. Go back to lesson 90 for a minute. Actually, 91. Lesson 91, how did we solve quadratics? Factoring. So we said, hey, when I see a quadratic equation, which means it is 4 terms, a is greater than 0. I have an exponent of 2, nothing smaller. I mean, I can have one smaller, but I have to have an exponent of 2. Don't have one that's larger than 2, so I've first tested to make sure it's a quadratic equation. My second thing was to say, okay, if it's a quadratic equation, now I've got to figure out how to solve it. So the first thing we said is I want to try to factor. And like I said, I've told you guys, I was just, Zoe was in there, and study hall a little bit ago, my student that's in geometry right now. We were working with a couple of problems, and I said, okay, now we can see that as we're working our problem, we've ended up with a quadratic equation. I told her, I said, the first thing you want to try to do is factor it. That's going to be easiest. Okay. Look and see, can I factor Can I look at my last term and find factors of that add together to equal my middle term? That's what we did in lesson 91. Then we solved for x, and in that particular situation in geometry, we're finding the length of a side of something. Length cannot be negative, so remember how we end up with plus or minus answers? In geometry, you say, well, if I have a positive answer and a negative answer, I'm going to have to use my positive answer because length cannot be negative, okay? So this, you're going to see this again next year. So we said, okay, first thing you want to do is try to factor. Now, if you cannot figure out factors, or if it's too difficult, then we can look at a couple of other options. The ones we looked at, we saw when we had a perfect square, a quadratic that was a perfect square, like x squared minus 25 equals 0. Okay, and you can flip over, this is in lesson 92. When we saw that we had the difference of two squares, remember difference of two squares means I have x plus 5 times x minus 5 equals 0. So x can be plus or minus 5. The other way we looked at setting this up was saying, okay, I can move 25 to each side and have x squared equals 25. So x is equal to plus or minus 5, because I would take the square root of each side. Okay, this is another form of factoring, but I have to be able to recognize this is the difference of two squares. If you do not recognize the difference of two squares, knowing how to do this is not going to help at all. Okay, you have to be able to recognize it as the difference of two squares. The same thing with lesson 93. Lesson 93, completing the square. You have to be able to recognize that I can solve by completing the square. Okay. But then in lesson 94, we talked about last week how no matter what kind of equation it is, I can use quadratic formula. Okay. It's more intensive, it's more work, but it will work for every type of quadratic equation that you need to solve. Okay. So if you don't remember, ooh, I factor it. Or if you don't recognize we've got a difference of two squares, or if I don't recognize that I could solve by completing the square, quadratic formula is something that you can use to solve every single one. Okay. In our textbook right now, our final answers, we are using just imperfect squares if we have an imperfect radical. We simplify as much as possible, but then we are not using decimals. We're not plugging them into the calculator. In geometry, we will actually give decimal equivalents. Okay. So definitely one of the things for y'all to know is next year in geometry, you need the calculator. If you don't have a calculator that you use, I highly recommend. Is that yours, Chad? So just I think it's the TI-85 is going to be your basic one. That's a great one to have. In Algebra 2, there's a graphing calculator that you have to have that is a lot more involved. I don't require that for geometry or for algebra for that matter, but for Algebra 2 and for upper level sciences, I think you need that one as well. Also, just kind of to keep in the back of your mind, if you're planning on going further beyond high school, if you're looking at doing the ACT to go possibly look at going to college or whatever, those are calculators that you can use on the ACT. So you want to get practice with them in math class, because you don't want the first time you use that calculator to be sitting in the ACT and you don't know, oh, and you've never learned to use that calculator, then you've wasted time trying to figure out how to use your calculator. So know that next year for geometry, the TI-85 is what you will need at least. Okay. I don't want you to, I mean, it's always the kind of thing where I tell people use your phone if you've forgotten your calculator, but I don't want you to get so used to using your phone because you cannot have a phone in the ACT. So, all right, but like I said, lesson 94 is where we left off with the quadratic formula. Now, one of the things that makes me very sad, but they expect you to know it as a geometry student. In geometry, you must know the quadratic formula. That's why I always tell you, write your basic formula so you memorize it, because in geometry, they do not give you the basic formula. They do not tell you that negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. They do not give you this basic formula. They expect you to know it, okay? So knowing this to be able to use this formula, what things do I have to be able to figure out from my quadratic equation? So if I have ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, what do I have to be able to tell from this?
You need to know the values of A, B,
I
and
need
C.
to know A equals what, B equals what, C equals what, because that's what I plug in here. Okay. And then I also have to remember my steps in a process. I have to remember PEMDAS. I need to remember how to simplify in order. So when I'm looking at this, remember my radical sign is a symbol of grouping. So, our first in PEMDAS, the P parentheses, it's parentheses and other symbols of grouping. Okay, it's not just parentheses, and if you have brackets or you have braces or you have a radical or you have absolute value, those are all examples of symbols of grouping. So that's what I've got here. So I know that I start with underneath my symbol of grouping. Now, again, I start underneath there and I start PEMDAS again. And I say, okay, I don't have any parentheses or other symbols of grouping. So my next step would be exponents. So I go ahead and take care of my exponent. Then PEM, okay? We know M is for multiplication. So I can look at this and I've got -4 times A times C. I have two multiplication problems underneath here, so I know I go in order from left to right. So I would multiply -4 times whatever A is, and then multiply that product by C. Now I have got a number plus or minus a number. I take care of those again underneath the radical. So I want to simplify everything under the radical before I do anything else, okay? Then, remember my fraction line is also a symbol of grouping. So that means I have to take care of everything above my fraction line before I divide by whatever 2 times A is. So we're going to practice with these some more and keep going. So we had, quickly. All right, so in lesson 94, we had done our classwork problems. Go ahead and turn over to 208. Page 208. We're going to practice with some of these. So I'm going to leave this up here as our basic to look at. So let's go ahead and start with 3x squared plus 5x minus 4 equals 0. And this is on page 208, activities 2. Page 208, activities 2. All righty. So underneath here, x is equal to -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. If you need to go ahead and use a separate sheet of paper, if you're not going to have room to write everything and you want to go ahead and start on another piece of paper, that is totally fine. Okay? It depends. Hopefully we'll get through it all in class. Yes. Yes. All right. So remember when we talked about quadratic formula? We said number 1, write basic formula. So we've done that. 2, we need to identify values of A, B, and C. Plug in values of A, B, C. And then number 4 is to simplify. Okay, so these are the steps we're going through. All right, so what is my value of A in this one? 3. What is my value of B? 5. And what is C? -4. Now remember, when I'm plugging in values, I want to be super careful with my positives and negatives. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say x is equal to -b. 5 is positive, so I have -5. Remember, if you want to go ahead and put every letter in parentheses so you make sure your signs, that is just fine. Plus or minus the square root of, I'm going to put my parentheses squared. We said b is 5 minus 4. I'm going to put parentheses for A and for C. What do we say A is?
3.
3. What is C? Negative 4. So not only do the parentheses there help me keep my sign separate, it also helps me remember that I'm going to be multiplying. So it kind of serves a couple of purposes. Because if I just had 3 minus 4, I'm going to look at it and go, oh, I'm subtracting. But I've got to multiply A times C. Okay? All over 2 times, what is my value of A?
3.
Good. 3. I understand. All right. So I'm going to put my, I'm just going to carry my equal sign down here. All right. So I can go ahead and eliminate parentheses now. Negative 5 plus or minus the square root of, what is 5 squared? 25. So remember, order of operations tells me underneath my radical, underneath my symbol of grouping, I start with dealing with exponents. So that's 5 squared is 25. Now, order of operations tell me I'm going to multiply, and I multiply from left to right. Negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. What is negative 12 times negative 4?
Positive 3.
Positive 48. Okay. If you need to write it step by step, you're welcome to. If you wanted to write negative 4 times negative 12 underneath here, I mean negative 4, yeah, negative 12 times negative 4 under here, you can write an extra step or just do it, just say negative 4 times 3 is negative 12, negative times a negative is a positive, 12 times 4 is 48. All over, what's in my denominator? 6. Now what am I going to take care of? What am I going to simplify next?
The radical.
Underneath the radical, and I have 25 plus 48. What is 25 plus 48? 73. So negative 5 plus or minus. Remember, even if I'm not dealing with something, I've still got to transfer it over. So I've still got to write that negative 5 plus or minus the square root of, and we said 25 and 48 is 73, all over 6. Now, knowing your times tables like this helps you to know, do I have any factors that multiply together to make 73?
No.
I know 8 times 9 is 72. I know, is there anything else that's in my 70s? 8 times 9 is 70. 7 times 10 is 70, so 7, 11, 77. So I mean, thinking through, yes.
What happened with the X? Or do we just stop there?
I mean, you can carry it down if you want to.
I didn't know if we just.
Yeah.
Is our final
No,
answer?
because our answer is going to be X equals something, so.
Is our final answer need the X?
Yes, because remember, we're solving for X. Okay, the whole purpose of solving a quadratic equation is to solve for possible values of X. Okay. All right, so if we look at this, if I can simplify this, I will. If I can't, I don't have to. Remember how we said that this is the same as negative 5 over 6 plus or minus the square root of 73 over 6. Remember that we said they're the same whether they're together or separated. This will come into play later when I can see that, hey, I could possibly cancel here, or if I was able to simplify this and I could cancel here. But if you cannot cancel, then you can just leave this as your answer. Okay? Part of my simplification process is if I can see that I could cancel, I would separate it and simplify, but in this particular problem, I cannot. Okay, so I'm going to leave my answer as negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 73 over 6. Any questions about that?
How do you know if you can leave it? How do you know if you can take it like that or not?
Okay, because let's say that I wasn't sure and I did break it apart. Is there anything I can simplify with a negative 5 and a 6? Mm-mm. Do I have a whole number in front of my radical that I could simplify with 6? Mm-mm. So I can look at this here and say, hey, could I simplify here or could I simplify here? If I cannot, then there's my answer. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and look at the next one. 2x squared plus 4x minus 3. 2x squared plus 4x minus 3 equals 0. Right. What is A?
2,
B?
4,
C?
-3.
Okay, so I have negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. Okay, I've got my blank formula. I have my values. I'm going to start plugging in. X is equal to, B is positive. My equation or my formula has a minus sign in it. So I know that will be negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4 times A is 2, C is -3 all over 2 times 2. What am I going to start simplifying first?
4 squared.
Okay, so I'm starting in here, so I'm going to go ahead and just rewrite -4 plus or minus the square root of. So I'm starting under my radical. I'm starting with 4 squared. 4 squared is 16. Okay. Now, I can do this instead of having to rewrite this again and again and again. I know that I took care of that first. Now I'm going to multiply. What is -4 times 2? -8. What is -8 times -3?
24.
What kind? Positive 24, so that means I have plus 24 over 2 times 2 is 4. Everybody good so far?
So,
All right. Now, what am I going to do? Now, what's the next thing I can simplify?
16, 24.
16 plus 24. What is 16 plus 24?
40.
Okay, so I have -4 plus or minus the square root of 40 over 4. Do you remember how a minute ago I said, when I get to this point right here, when I've simplified everything I can simplify, and I think I've got my final answer, and I say, hey, if I separated, could I simplify this and this? And I would have a -4 over a +4, right? So I know that could be simplified. Is 40 a perfect square? Can it be simplified? Okay, I can simplify the square root of 40. Okay, because 40 is what? What times what?
4 times 10.
4 times 10, and what do I know the square root of 4 is? 2. Okay, so I've got some simplifying I can do here. I'll go ahead and bring it up here just so we can see it a little bit better. So I have x is equal to -4 over 4 plus or minus the square root of. So we said the square root of 40 is equal to, that'll be 2 times 2 times 2 times 5. My buddies are my 2, so it's going to be 2 times the square root of 10. Okay, so this becomes 2 times the square root of 10 over 4. Yes,
Do you have to simplify?
yes. Okay. So now what can happen? Notice that I've broken these apart. So this becomes a 1, this becomes a 1. What happens here?
4 and 2.
2 and 4.
2 divided by 2 is 1, 4 divided by 2 is 2.
2 and 10.
Okay, so now I'm going to have x is equal to, what did we find? What is this part right here?
1.
-1 plus or minus, what's my numerator here? Square root of 10 over 2. So when I simplify, I've got to look and see, okay, what do I have left? If something is above my fraction line, then it has to stay in the numerator. If something is below the fraction line, then it has to stay in the denominator. Okay, so -4 over +4 simplified to be a -1. I still have my plus or minus, and then I have my 2 and 4 canceled. So 1 times the square root of 10 is just the square root of 10, and my 2 is in my denominator. Any questions on that one? All righty. let's look at the next one. So I've got x squared minus 3x minus 6 equals 0. Negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. What is my value of x?
1,
What is b?
-3,
What is c?
-6.
Okay, I've got two negatives in this one. So I'm going to have x is equal to negative. Now, what did we say b is in this one?
3,
What kind of 3?
-3.
Okay, so notice I've got my negative as part of my formula. It has to be there. But then when I plug in b, which is also a -3, I can see in a moment I'm going to be able to simplify, and a -3 will become a positive. But that's why I want to go ahead and have it for right now. I'm going to put my -3 in parentheses this time. Why am I doing that?
Because it's a square.
Okay, real quick, -3 squared is not equal to -3 squared. These are not the same thing. Okay? If I see -3 squared, this is read as the opposite of 3 squared. So what is 3 squared?
9.
What is the opposite of 3 squared? -9. Okay, so if it does not have parentheses, I do not include the negative in my calculation. If it is in parentheses, this is -3 squared, which means I've got -3 times -3, which is what? +9. So notice in this one, my negative is not included in parentheses. So I do 3 squared first. 3 squared is 9. The opposite of 9 is -9. So if I do not have parentheses, my answer will be negative. If I do have parentheses, I have to include my negative with my number. So a negative times a negative is a positive. So that's why the importance of having parentheses. That's why I'm telling you, that's why I like to put this in parentheses, because now I can see this is -3 squared. Okay, it's not -3 squared like this. Okay. So I put in parentheses my -3 squared minus 4 times a is 1, c is -6, all over 2 times 1. Go ahead and take a break and we will come back.
What? -6 and -6 times 2 is 3.
And the negative times the negative is a.
What?
Miss Jennifer,
Yes, ma'am.
how did you simplify the answer for assignment?
Pardon?
Like, you taking the steps to simplify the answer?
Sure. So remember, this is the same as -4 over +4, right? Okay, so go ahead and write -4 over 4 plus or minus the square root of 40 over 4. Now, the first thing I've got to do is, what is -4 divided by 4? Okay, so come over here and write -1 plus or minus. Now, what is the square root of 40 simplified? Come over here and put the square root of 40. What are my prime factors? Good. Okay. Good. So now I'll go ahead and write 2 square root of 10 over 4. What can cancel there? Right, always cancel whole numbers or like terms. So I have a 2 here and a 4 here. What did that 2 become? 1. So this 4 becomes. Okay. So now, -1 1 plus or minus, what is 1 times the square root of 10? This is square root of 10, yeah, over. Okay, so we separated them to be able to look and see how to cancel them.
Only square root of 10.
Yes, because we took care of the denominator here on that one, so it's -1 plus or minus the square root of 10 over 2. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. So, here, you said -6 squared is +36. -4 times 2 is -8 times -1 is +8. And so 36 and 8 is 44. So you have 6 plus or minus the square root. Okay, so 44, okay, so go ahead and pull this out and put 6 over 4 plus or minus. Now, square root of 44, what's that gonna break down to? 4 times 11, and what of those can I pull out as a part of the 2, so 2 times the square root of 11 over 4. What can I cancel here? Okay, what would it become? Okay. Good, so 3 over 2. Plus or minus. Now, what can cancel with 2 and 4? Good, so what's left in your numerator? So now, you could either leave this like it is, or you can have 3 plus or minus the square root of 11 all over 2. As long as the denominators are the same, I can combine it as 1, or I can leave them separated, whatever you prefer.
It's like the right side.
Good, yeah.
Dang it,
Very good.
gotcha.
Very good.
Just because I missed the door. I made it.
You slammed into the door. I did that in 3rd grade and gashed my cheek open.
Oh, yeah.
I love public school.
Yeah.
What?
Are you running from like
No, I was running back into my library and I gashed my cheek open on the door. But it didn't bleed. It was really weird.
All right, come on, special friends.
Let's go.
so you put me in a hole?
You found like a porcelain and listen. She raised that time. She was waiting, but she wanted to take me outside. I saw you talking.
I taste.
Yeah,
They won't.
You overcharge cheese. You overcharge it to the point where it'll never turn off.
Chad's like, can I get
That's supposed to be done during the break. That's the purpose of the
Whoa.
break.
Never ending battery life. It's never done.
So we left off, and now we're gonna start simplifying. What is a negative -3?
3.
A +3, good. So -3, we will make that a +3 plus or minus the square root of. -3 squared is
9.
9. -4 times 1, -4 times -6.
24.
Positive 24, so we have plus 24 all over 2. What is 9 plus 24?
33.
All right, 9 plus 24 is 33. all over 2. I can look at this and say, hey, if I separated, could I simplify 3 over 2? Nope, nothing simplifies there. Excuse me, I know that the square root of 33, I know 33 is 3 times 11. Neither of those can be simplified, so I could not simplify anything there. Questions? All right, let's look at the next one. I'll leave that. All righty, so we have 2x squared minus 6x minus 1 equals 0. All right, what is the value of a, Chad?
Can I go get
What is the value of a?
2.
Good. What is b, Mark?
-6.
-6. And what is c, Mark?
Negative. Wait, no, that's -6.
The value of c. A, B, C.
Oh, -1.
-1. Okay. So we're gonna start plugging them in. X is equal to negative b. I have a -6 plus or minus the square root of. I'm gonna put my -6 in parentheses and square it. -6 squared minus 4 times a is 2, c is -1. All over 2 times a, which is 2. I'll go ahead and fill them in. Now we're going to start simplifying. X is equal to -6, -6, +6,
Oh.
plus or minus the square root of now 36. Now I have -4 squared is, I'm sorry, not -4 squared, -4 times 2, -8, and -8 times -1, +8, so it will be +8 all over 2 times 2 is 4. I can already see here that eventually I am going to need to separate to simplify y. What can I see here that I know I'm going to have to simplify? 6 and 4. I can already see that both of these are divisible by 2. Okay, so I already know that there's going to be some simplification there. So I'm going to need to split them apart in a minute. X is equal to 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 plus 8?
44.
44 all over 4. All right, so now thinking about the square root of 44. Can that be simplified? Yes, what do I know when I break down the square root of 44?
4 times 11.
4 times 11, so which of those can I simplify?
4.
The 4, what is the square root of 4?
2.
2, so I know that ends up being the square root of 11. I'm 4 times square, I'm 2 times square root of 1. Good night. Easy for you to say. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and go side to side and start breaking this down. So I'm gonna have 6 over 4 plus or minus. We just said the square root of 44 is equal to 2 times 2 times 11. My 2's come out. So that's 2 times the square root of 11. So 2 times the square root of 11 over 4. Now I'm looking at, what do I have in my numerator? That will cancel with my denominator. What are they both divisible by? 2. 6 divided by 2 is, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. Now here, when I'm canceling a whole number and a radical, I can only cancel whole numbers with whole numbers and radicals with radicals. So here, I could not cancel anything in my denominator with a radical because I don't have a radical in my denominator. The only thing I can cancel here are the whole numbers. What are they both divisible by? 2 divided by 2 is? 4 divided by 2 is?
2.
So now we have 3 over 2 plus or minus. What is 1 times the square root of 11? Square root of 11. I don't have to write the 1 over, what's my denominator here? 2. So again, in this one, now they have the same denominators. So I could combine it to 3 plus or minus the square root of 11 over 2. I can either leave them separated, or I can go ahead and combine it with one denominator. Everybody good with that? So the next one is going to be a little different. Don't you love it when they change it up on us?
I forgot how many there was.
These are my favorite kind of stuff. And I'm sure you will love them too. Okay. 3x squared plus 9x plus 5 equals 0. Negative b, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a. What is the value of a?
3,
b,
9,
c.
5.
Yay, they're all positive. That makes me happy.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and plug them in.
Positive makes me positive.
Positive makes me positive. I'm glad to hear that. All right. I had a friend that she would always say, you say be positive. And she'd be like, I'm positive and I'm negative. So we're like, okay, whatever. All right, so negative b. So I'm gonna have negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 9 squared. Not a plus. It's a
I just
minus.
love the part and inside out, but like, be positive. I'm
That's right.
positive we're not gonna get out of this.
I'm positive we're gonna lose. Negative 9 squared. It's like my daughter's softball game right now. Minus 4. Bless their hearts. It's okay. Don't watch my video, Cam. This is terrible. So she and her brother, right? She is 17, he is 13, and her goal in life is to make his life miserable. Okay, like that's what she has determined is like the most miserable she can make him. And so anyway, they're always like messing with each other and stuff. And so, like I said, her little team is struggling. She's the only junior on the team. They don't have any seniors. She's the only junior, and everybody else is freshmen, sophomores. And so out of them, only 4 have ever played like travel ball or whatever. So everybody else is like brand new or never played, or it's just rough. So anyway, but then my son, his lacrosse team is really good. And so we were laughing. And so she was messing with him the other night, and I said, at least we have one winner in the house. And so, but if you can't tell, our house is very sarcastic. So anyway, so we always are messing with each other. So I'm always like getting little digs in at her about, stuff, and him too. But anyway. All right. So a little part of my life. You want me to tell more stories?
Yes.
Yeah, someone's gonna listen to 95. So.
Yes. Zoe wants to
I
do
don't.
math. Sorry.
Girl. Sorry, I've been over all of what you're doing.
I know. She's already worked ahead, so she's like, I'm bored. Okay, so we've got x is equal to negative b plus or minus 9 squared minus 4 times a times c. What is a? 3, and c is 5. All over 2 times 3. X is equal to negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 9 squared. 81. Negative 4 times 3. Negative 12. Negative 12 times positive 5. Bless you. Negative 60. Okay. All over. 2 times 3 is 6. X is equal to negative 9 plus or minus the square root of. What is 81 minus 60? 21. What am I doing wrong? 3x squared plus 9x plus 5. 3, 9, 5.
No, I got that answer.
That's the same. I got to.
No, Miss Jeanette's right.
Evidently, I just copied the wrong answer. Oh, I copied when I was putting answers in my book from previous years. I put the answer for the one that is right below it in C. Man, so we're not going to have fun on this one. Maybe we'll have fun on the next one.
I just said this was
Okay.
the least complicated.
Negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 21 over 6
Oh, yeah, they're gonna have fun on the
Now,
next one.
is there something I can simplify here?
21.
9 and 6.
9 and 6 are both divisible by
3.
3. 21 is 3 times 7. So I know 3 and 7 are both prime factors. There's nothing I can simplify there. But I know I can have x is equal to negative 9 over 6 plus or minus the square root of 21 over 6. We said negative 9 and 6 are both divisible by 3. So that will be a 3. This will be a 2. So I can have negative 3 halves plus or minus the square root of 21 over 6. Why do I have to keep them separated?
Because it on the same denominator.
Different denominators, good. It's the next one we'll have fun with.
I told you the problem, like, I remember that was the one.
Alrighty, so the last one in activities 2 is 5x squared minus 7x plus 2 equals 0. What is A?
5.
B?
-7.
C? B is negative. Be careful. So x is equal to negative 7 plus or minus the square root of negative 7 squared minus 4 times 5 times 2 all over 2 times 5. Negative 7 becomes a positive 7 plus or minus the square root of negative 7 squared, positive 49, good. Negative 4 times 5,
Negative 20.
negative 20, negative 20 times 2, negative 40, all over 2 times 5 is 10. X equals 7 plus or minus the square root of, what is 49 minus 40?
9.
9 over 10. Who said 3?
Mark.
What is the square root of 9?
3.
3.
Good job,
So that means I have 7 plus or minus 3 over 10. Oh, this is different, isn't it? So this means, remember, when I have plus or minus, that means I could have 7 plus 3 over 10, or x equals 7 minus 3 over 10. What is 7 plus 3?
10.
10 over 10 is equal to
1.
1. We have like a real number answer. It's not left as a radical. It's not as a fraction. What is 7 minus 3? 4 over 10, which would reduce to 2 over 5. So in this one, x is equal to 1 or 2 over 5. So this one was very different because remember, as we're going through the simplification process, we need to simplify as much as possible. And so when we found that, hey, I actually have a perfect square here, then I have to make sure that when I have the plus or minus, it means I'm going to either add 3 or subtract 3. So I have to do the operations for both to be able to solve for what each of them would be. Okay? What we will do is let's go ahead and do 2 more that involve simplifying. So we're just going to go straight. We're going to do the middle 2 of activities 3.
Like the 2 middle ones.
Activities 3, the middle 2 problems
On
on page 208. Still on 208, just moving to activities 3. All righty. The first one will be 5x squared minus 21x equals 4. What's wrong with that?
-4.
Equals -4.
Yeah, there's only 3
We're
times.
supposed to do this. with middle ones.
The middle two problems. Okay, so what is wrong with this?
There's 3
There's
times.
no zero.
I don't have it equal to 0, so I need to make it equal to 0. How am I going to do that?
Plus 4.
I need to add 4 to each side. So now I have 5x squared minus 21x plus 4 equals 0. So the first thing I had to do here was put it in standard form. So if it is not already in standard form, I must put it in standard form to make it a quadratic equation that we're used to seeing, where I have 4 terms equal to 0. First term a is greater than 0. I have an exponent of 2 with my first term, nothing higher. Okay? What is my value of a now?
5,
B,
-4.
C, 4. All right. So I'm going to have -21 plus or minus the square root of -21 squared minus 4 times 5 times 4 all over 2 times 5. That is a lot. -21 becomes
21.
positive 21 plus or minus the square root of -21 squared. What is 21 squared? 21 times 21 is what?
441.
441. -4 times 5,
-20.
-20. -20 times positive 4.
80.
What kind of 80?
Negative.
-80. All over 2 times 5 is 10. So now I've got 21 plus or minus the square root of 441 minus 80. So x is equal to 21 plus or minus the square root of, what is 441 minus 80?
361.
I'm sorry,
361.
361 all over 10. All righty. All right, so
Are we done?
now I'm
There's
thinking,
someone I can't be
Melissa, want to get into that?
all right. So what I want you to look at when we get there, is there anything else I can do?
No.
Because think about, even if I could factor out something, it would have to be divisible by 10. Now, what I want you to look at now is look at this. I could have, we're not worried about that right now. I could have factored this one into 2 factors and then solved. Okay, so let's think about, what if I would have made this a box? And I had 5x squared here and 4. A times C is going to be 20. So I need factors of 20 that add together to make -21, and they're both going to be negative. Because I would have my 2 sets of parentheses equal to 0, same, negative, x, x. What are my factors of 20? Or negative 20 that would add together to make a -21.
Times -1.
I'd have -20 plus -1. So I'd have -20, -1. That'll be 5. X, 5x, 1, x, 4, 5x plus 1 equals 0. Or actually, 5x plus 1 times x plus 4 Why did I write two parentheses equals 0? So what would x be here?
Oh,
Wait.
Negative 1 over 5. And what would x be here?
-4.
Okay. So notice that if I were to say 1 divided by 5, there is a way that I could end up simplifying that one, but I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and just move on to our packet for time's sake.
so is one the answer we got wrong?
No, it is not wrong. It's just in radical form. Okay. So,
Is it simplified enough?
so hold on a second. Let me think of, first of all, let's make sure our,
No.
That hard.
20 years. So long.
Oh my god, it's too big. Oh, you want me to get her? No. I'm too bad.
She is so hard.
No, her. Yesterday she threw a ball. You have to watch. She threw a ball and take up my eye. My eye. You hit her. You just slapped me. I hit harder than her. I remember you said you didn't like her.
It was a bell. I was like,
Yeah, that's kind of how death works.
sometimes you,
oh.
like in experiments, you just want to be sure.
I'm so cute.
So
Uh-huh.
then they
Hey, guess what? 361 is a perfect square.
What?
What?
Figure it out.
11:30.
361 is a perfect square. Figure it out.
200.
I mean,
1 sideways.
27. I just guessed it.
Try numbers.
19.
Check you out. See, all you gotta do
And
is
she
the
is
square
right.
root of
It took her
361.
one
Yes, and she got it right.
I
I just checked it.
All right. So 21 plus or minus, what do we say the square root of 361 is?
19.
19 over 10. So that means I've got 21 plus 19 over 10. X equals that. So X equals, what's 21 plus 19? 40 over 10, which equals what? 4. Where, and then why am I? Bless you.
Bless you.
Where's my negative?
Mark just said it was a Monday.
Oh goodness, what did I do up here? I just wrote my signs wrong. These were supposed to be negative. So these will be positive. Okay, so X can be 4, or X is equal to 21 minus 19. Settle down. Not over 4, 10. What's 21 minus 19?
2, 3, 1,
2 over 10, which reduces to 1/5.
Oh, so it is right.
So we ended up with the same exact answers. Okay, so when we factored it, we said we ended up with X is 1/5 and 4 when we used our quadratic equation. At 361. Yes, Sadie.
Did you take, wait, can we do that instead of that? Like with the box instead of everything else?
When you're given a choice, now if it says factor using quadratic equation, you have to use a quadratic equation. If it says factor any way you choose to, you can choose to either do this way or you can use the quadratic formula. You can pick whichever one. But the main thing is they're going to be the same. You're going to get the same answer each time. So by looking at this and saying, hey, wait, if it solves to this, that's when we go, hey, this needs to be simplified. And it could be because who knew the square root of 361 was 19 to 19? See, it helps to know perfect squares up to 20. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pass out, yay, some quadratic equation reviews. And those of you that need to, that are watching this online, I will email these.
Are we not going to do the bottom?
No, we're just gonna go ahead for the second time.
I already have one.
What's Jennifer? Are we turning this in?
Let me just pass them down.
Yes, I'm gonna do that in just a minute.
Oh, fine.
All right, go ahead and put your name on your handout.
I didn't think you said
What's your name
on it?
Oh.
Okay. So worksheet 48, go ahead and put your name on it. Notice there are 3 at the top that say solve by factoring. This will go along with lesson 91. At the top, go ahead and mark this as lesson 91. If you need to look back at your steps, look back at your notes, look back at your text, lesson 91. Section 2 goes along with lesson 92. This one was factoring by taking roots. Okay, so sections 1 and 2 are both factoring, but the first one was factoring in the traditional sense. The second was taking roots. The third section is going to be completing the square, and that's going to go along with lesson 93. Section 3. So Zoe, on the front page, did you get lesson 393? And then when you turn the page, this is going to be quadratic equation. It'll go along with lesson 94. Okay. What I will do is let's go ahead and take a look at these. For worksheet 48, look at section 3, completing the square. The top 3 will be assigned. The bottom 3 will be bonus. Okay, so let me go ahead and mark that. So I'm going to do the top 3. So the top 3 will be your assignment. So we'll do 3 in section 1, 3 in section 2, 3 in section 3. The bottom 3 will be for bonus points. Turn the page. We're going to do 6 of these. The top 6 are your assignment. The bottom 3 are bonus. Top 6 assignment, bottom 3 are bonus. So this. All right, so what I want to do is for the remainder of class, I want you to work through our review packet, okay? On Thursday, listen up, on Thursday, I will be giving you an assessment on this to take home that will be due next Monday. It will only be a few questions, okay? I'm going to make it as small and short as possible, but that means each one is worth a lot of points. Okay, so that means if you mess one up, your score tanks. That's why I want to make sure that we work through this, that you practice with it, that you understand your steps in a process, and then go ahead and solve, okay? So go ahead and make sure you're using your notes as you're working through this review. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll be happy to come help you. I am going to come by and pick up your homework from lesson 93, page 206, the 3 problems that we went over this morning. I'll come by and collect those. Okay, let me know if you have questions.
I think it's the top 6 for this, but what would the bonus be?
So the bottom 3 here are bonus. No, no, we're doing 3, 3, and 3. Yeah.
One page.
No, just that work. Yeah, because I saw your work earlier. Thank you.
Were you laughing?
Because where was the sheet that had your work on it? Uh-huh.
Is it cool if we read it with like a comment?
Absolutely. Okay, make sure you're using your time wisely because I don't want it to come test time and y'all don't make a good grade on the test because you didn't use your time wisely in class. Hopefully we don't have to separate for the last few weeks of school.
Yeah, that's the other one. That makes more sense. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Can we see the file? Yeah, it does.
Remember, what is the first thing that we have to make sure our equation is in? Standard form. Needs to move. What was here? What is this right here? How many terms do I have to have for a quadratic? Four. So this is term one, term two. All right. One's positive, one's negative, so the sign of the larger is what? Okay, so. Okay. Remember, make sure if it's not already in standard form.
Isn't a perfect square, right?
48 is not a perfect square, but it can be simplified. Okay, so think about what is my smallest prime factor of 48. Look over on the back of your paper, wherever you want to practice it, or whatever you want to write out. So what's your smallest prime factor? 2, and 2 times what? Okay, smallest prime factor of 24 times what?
2 times 2 times 6.
Okay, but we gotta break down 6. So what is 6?
2 times 2 times 3.
Okay. So you said 2 times 4, 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. What's 8 times 3?
24.
So what are we trying to get to?
We need the other 2.
Okay, so what are my buddies?
Plus
Okay, so what can come out?
4.
What's left under that? Alrighty, good. Good. So remember, what do I have to do to this? What form does it have to be in to solve it? Correct form. Okay, so notice on your top one, the third problem has to be in standard form. AX plus BX, I'm sorry, AX squared plus BX plus C equals 0. So you have to solve for 0. So what does that mean that 20 has to do? Has to move, and how am I gonna move it? Positive over here, how do I move it? Good, so come over here and write X squared plus X. What did you say you had to do to move it?
That's everything.
Minus 20
Oh.
equals 0. So now you're factoring this right here.
Okay. Let's see. Now we'll do square.
We've got about 10 minutes or so.
16. 13. 13. Yes, 16. No. Why am I writing 13? I wrote 16. I wrote 16 halfway down the problem.
Less than 92.
I did that.
What do we do if it was not in a perfect square? If it was not a perfect square?
No, wait. I was right. Yeah. It's 16, but then it's changed to 13.
Oh, and if it's simplified, I simplify it, but if not, it just stays as right.
I get your 13?
Remember, look back at your answers in your book. Look back at lesson 92. How did you record your answers? Plus or minus. Yep, remember, we gotta have that plus or minus. Well, I mean, the whole packet is homework. These are bonus. So the bottom 3 of the first page and the bottom 3 of the last page are bonus. So Betsy, what did you put in front of your answer on that first one in section 2? What was in front of 12? What did you put right here? Plus or minus over here. So what is, we're just gonna put the 41 over there. But we've gotta have a plus or minus in front of it. Okay, so now what is the square root of X squared? Okay. And then plus or minus equals plus or minus square root of 41, and that's it.
Fraction.
Okay, so you isolate C. Okay, and then you did B divided by 2 squared. So now,
We're both getting fractions.
hold on a second. Where did you get this right here because I've got 8x up here. So where did you get that? Yeah, and I'm just trying to figure out, and so we should have.
So what is that?
Let's start right here. What should this term be?
11.
Right here. X squared.
Oh, each of them.
What is your sign after it?
-22 was.
Plus.
Oh, no.
Okay, 8x equals.
Oh, I was
Sorry.
going to see. 121.
14. Okay. So now you're factoring this right here. So
8x plus 4.
Okay. Good. Now I'm gonna rewrite that.
4 is right here. Equals 64.
And I have to do that.
I think the square root of both sides.
Oh, you did change it.
Plus or minus.
He's on the.
There you go.
I want to finish it at 7.
Yes.
No, 4.
Over.
So now I need to solve for x. So how am I gonna solve for x? Now, is it positive or negative on the left side? On the left-hand side, it's positive. So how am I gonna do that? Okay, so we're on the left-hand side. Think of what you just moved. What did you move over? Just moved over that -4. Plus or minus. Now, I've got to look at what is -4 plus 4.
Oh,
and what is -4 minus 4.
Are you?
Plus 1 would be 1.
Oh, okay.
But you can simplify.
Oh, yeah, you gotta do it.
I got.
-4 plus a positive 4. 0. And -4 minus 4. -4, and I take away 4 more. -4
Negative
number
8,
line.
that's right.
What about your hands? Okay, so I cannot simplify that, so all I will do is simplify those two. So go ahead and write them separately. Simplify them.
So extra
That's
side.
not-
Where do you want to go?
I had no idea.
Oh, that's supposed to be a number.
Squared.
Y'all doing okay?
Over
No.
2.
Squared. So you probably read it too soon. So smart.
Yeah, you have to add.
Got about 4 more minutes. Finishing this packet will be your homework, remember. So what we'll do is we will go through these on Monday. The first thing we will do, I don't wanna do that. Probably what I'll do Monday. I think what I may do is, not Monday, Thursday. On Thursday, I will have you at the beginning of class get out a sheet of paper and write down just your answers to turn in. And then we'll go through these and make any corrections that we need to do as review for the test. Okay, so on Thursday, we'll come in, we'll get out a piece of paper, we'll just write down the answers that what you've gotten. And then we'll work through these, any of them that you missed, we'll review them to get ready for the test, okay? But remember, our whole goal of solving quadratic equations is to solve for what x could be, okay? So we know that because I have an exponent of 2, I'm gonna have 2 answers, okay? And I'm gonna end up with 2 answers because I have an exponent of 2. I have found that I can either solve by factoring. Factoring includes taking roots. We found that we could solve by completing the square or using the quadratic equation. So on the test, you will have problems for each of these, and then I'll give you some that you get to choose what method you want to use. Okay, so you'll get to select the method that you want to use to solve. All right. So if you have any questions, be sure to let me know. Like I said, this is due on Thursday, and but between now and Thursday, if you need help, let me know. All righty. All right, online, if you need help, be sure to let me know, and we'll set up a time. Hope you feel better and hope you're doing well. See ya.